All right. So as everybody kind of trickles in and people listening behind the scenes as well, and then people in the future listeners who are going to catch this episode on YouTube, welcome to the third episode of Elevate and Examine. Honestly, I can't believe we're already on the third episode, Natalie. This seems like it was just kind of a random conversation we were having here on X one day, and then here we are three episodes in. So you know, pretty amazing.
It is amazing and I love it. I'm so happy that we can have these discussions together. I think every single one so far has been wonderful. So I think this one is going to be very insightful once again.
I agree 100%, and things are just kind of rolling along here. We're back again, like I mentioned, with episode 3. We've got another great guest today, A. Lee Judge. We'll be talking about a topic that touches really every part of our lives today. That topic is content marketing, but we'll be sort of looking at it from an interesting angle. So if you're listening and you have friends who are in the field or have an interest in the topic, please let them know we're live and tell them to head on over to X and jump in to listen. So before we dive in, let's do that introduction thing that we do before every episode. I'm Anthony Gaenzle. I am the founder of e&icreative, and I'm fortunate to be hosting Elevate and Examine with the amazing Pastor Natalie Young. Natalie is the founder of Examine This Moment and a million other things. So, so Natalie, here we are again. I'm excited to be here with you.
I know it's just such a great blessing and time to be here together. In the midst of so much going on, taking these moments together like this, I think it's awesome.
For sure, for sure. And I'm glad we connected, and I'm glad I think we were talking about ways we could collaborate, and we were kind of talking about just blog posts and things like that, and then it turned into a whole show. So it's working out nicely.
Yes, for sure. Yes, for sure. Yeah, I think it's just going to continue to grow, and it's great. I'm honored to be a part.
Same here, same here. And like I said, today we're talking about content marketing. And also, like I said, we're talking about it from a bit of a different angle. So it's an angle that's not necessarily all bright and shiny. I love content marketing. It's been one of my favorite subjects since it became a marketing term. But this angle is not, like I mentioned, it's all not all bright and shiny, but it's something that we really need to consider deeply. And that angle is the moment that content started to become noise. It's really noisy out there. If
Mhm.
you're online at all during the course of the day, you truly understand what I mean by that. It's so much so that I was reading something the other day, and we're now measuring the amount of digital data online in something called zettabytes. And I didn't even know what that was until I popped up this article. Basically, a zettabyte is equal to a billion terabytes. And terabytes to me, when that came
Sheesh.
out, that was like, wow, okay, I have a lot of data on my phone now. But a
hmm
billion of those, that's wild.
I mean, just that thought alone is just like overwhelming just to consider, and that's why you and I are talking about this today because there is so much digital noise. I mean, they're keeping track of so much digital fingerprints, so to speak. That's what these terabytes, billion terabytes are, things that, we're doing. But when you think about it, this, I I just get a little bit like, God help us, because we want to make a difference, each of us. We have
Mhm.
something to say with our brand. There's something that each of us are trying to do with our brand so that we can stand out. And that's why I think this discussion today is so important.
100%. And I looked at now and then I'll glance at my how many posts times I posted on X, for example, and I think the last time I looked, it was close to 190,000 times. And yes, I've been here since 2012, but I look at that and I think my instant thought is you need to turn off your phone and go outside. Yeah, and you take that, and not everybody's posted that many times, but you take those numbers and you start to multiply that by all the people on social media, and then you sprinkle in blog content and video and
Yes.
podcasts and all of the different digital data online.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
content's really starting to all blend together. What do you tell people when you're having conversations about this? How do you tell them? What are your pieces of advice to kind of stand out in this crazy packed world of content?
I think something that's really important is that, we remain authentic, we remain intentional, we remain consistent, that when we're telling whatever it is that we're posting or we're putting out there, that we're staying true to who we are. I think that's something that you and I have continued on that message, because our story, who we are, the perspective that we're putting out there in this digital world, so to speak, is important, that we're staying true to that. I think people who see who you truly are will want to continue to hear more from you. But if you just, your voice and everything you're saying is just identical, literally identical to somebody else, then how are you truly standing out?
Yeah, and I see that in the form of the negative side of it anyway. I see it in the form a lot of here on LinkedIn, on other channels, you'll see the same exact post, not a version of a post, but
Mm-hmm.
literally the same exact words posted by one person. You scroll maybe five or
Mm-hmm.
six posts and you see another person with this same exact
Yes.
post. And it's just,
Yep.
that's
Mm-hmm.
not the way to stand out. It's the quickest way to
No.
blend in. And who wants to blend
Yeah.
in today?
And it's one thing if it's hitting you in a certain way, so you're like, okay, I want to reshare this, I want to repost this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so kind of like, building on that is one aspect of it. But if you're, like you're saying, if you're doing the identical same post, then for sure you're not making that, you're not even giving the person credit, so for the in the first place.
Kind of
you
plagiarism,
know
or yeah, some
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
copyright issue or there or something.
Sure, sure, exactly. Now, I think it's important, like if you hear quotes, if you hear like if there's somebody that you really admire and you just post about them and you're like, this person truly stands out to me, so I want to quote them. That's awesome, but how do we, like I think about like how do we not just blend in even when we're doing that, you know?
I think a lot of it is about today. It's come down to your personal brand and your
Mm-hmm.
personality and the things that make you different, and
Mm-hmm.
really figuring out why your audience should care. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we all bring something to the table that's unique. We all bring a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things that are the same. So figure out what that thing is that really makes you unique,
Mm-hmm.
and it clearly and consistently explain to your audience why they should care and why it matters to them. And it's not about,
Mm-hmm.
look at me, I did this, I did that, I'm so amazing. It's about here's me, and here's why you should care, because it impacts your life in this way. It's more
Mm-hmm.
about, like, when you're selling a product today, people don't care about the specs and details of the product. They care about how it transforms their life,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of how
Mm-hmm.
you have to approach your content these days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I think the goal should be not to just be seen, but to leave value wherever you show up, wherever you're being seen, you
I
know.
agree. I agree. And it becomes
Mm-hmm.
really frustrating, I think, for some people who can't find that way to stand out. And some of the advice I have for people who are feeling that frustration is it takes time. Like I said
Mm-hmm.
just a moment ago, I've been on
Yes.
X since 2012.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
I it took a long time to build
Mm-hmm.
an audience, to get that engagement up. And I'm not exactly where I want to be either. I want to keep
Mm-hmm.
going. So it's a journey, and you
Mm-hmm.
really have to be ready for
Mm-hmm.
that.
I agree. And also in the space where you have many followers, for example, Anthony, you have tons of followers here on X. So, like, even there, you standing out to be able to reach out to different people who are constantly communicating with you matters as well.
Agreed. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
you and I were talking about sort of the difference when you're posting. A lot of people are posting for attention, and they want that attention, but really it's more about intention. You really want to
Yes.
shift that. I know you had some thoughts on that as we were talking.
Yes. Yes. And you got to think about. I always think about this. Why? What kind of attention do we want to create? When we're with the messages that we're putting out there, what kind of attention do we want to create? Don't be lost in all this noise that to be safe, you're looking like everybody else, but decide, how can I hold the interest of my audience? I have to continue to decide that the attention that I want to keep is pure in heart, the purity of who I am. And I want to draw people on purpose, so I'm considering my purpose, but I'm also drawing people on purpose. So my intention must remain goal oriented and consistent.
Consistency is a huge one. I think that if you really want to stand out, you have to do sometimes sort of those boring, consistent, tedious things over and over and over. And that's not to say just repeating yourself over and over. You have to have that purpose built into it, and you have to understand your audience, but you have to be willing to stay the course and keep putting
Mm-hmm.
yourself out there for a long time before it really sticks.
Mm-hmm. It's true. That's for sure. That's true. That's true. Inconsistency will speak very loud just as much as consistency will.
Very
you
true.
know so so then we start thinking about why leaders feel the pressure to perform, right? We start thinking about that as well. As we're leading in this brand, we're trying to put messages out there. The pressure is felt based on trying to perform in a manner that there's a difference being made. So balancing the demand of building your brand versus also remaining authentic. So, like, I think it just keeps going back to, how can I stay true to who I am as I'm trying to continue to put out content that will demonstrate, this is me, this is who I am. I'm showing you who I am in my writing, in what I'm saying, and what I'm posting, whether it's a video. I'm being consistent in who I am. I think that's, like, keeps coming back to that.
Yeah, very true. That's how you build those connections. You have to you're not reaching everybody with every post, so you have to, as you continue start to reach people with each subsequent connection that you make with them and each post that they see in their feed, they need to see that consistency before they really understand who you are and what you bring to the table
Mm-hmm.
and what you mean to their lives. Without that
Mm-hmm.
consistency, it's really hard to make deep connections that really drive growth for you or for your audience.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think audiences out there, like even right now, anyone that's listening to us, for example, where we get conditioned to tune out meaningless content. Let's be honest. We will
Oh,
we
yeah.
will tune it out.
And there's a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've been
Absolutely.
I've been guilty through the years of creating it. I mean, we've all been there where we thought,
Mm-hmm.
it's all about just churning out content. It's about just putting out the most content, and that's not the case. If you don't have the
Mm-hmm.
right thought behind it, you don't have the audience's best
Mm-hmm.
interest in mind when you create content, people will tune it out. they see through. They see enough content out there that they can see through what you put meaning into and thought into.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we have to slow down to create meaningful impact, right? That I think that's so important. Let's just, decide that we will slow down, evaluate so that we're creating meaningful impact. Sometimes I think it's so much about, like, people think it's so much about like a quantity, like I've got to put tons of stuff out there, but they're not considering the quality of it. So we
That's
have to
right.
slow down and we have to create meaningful impact. So pay attention to the things that are making a difference.
100%. I think that word consistency, sometimes people take that to mean that they just have to be present, posting new content every 10 minutes, and that gets them
Mm,
in trouble versus, a few targeted, thoughtful posts here and there, but consistently. So you're not posting twice a month randomly. You're posting at a cadence that people understand, but they're not overwhelmed by, and you're able to have the bandwidth in your life to actually make each piece of content thoughtful and powerful.
mhm,
That's where it really is at.
mhm. It will be memorable, and it will stick in people's minds, right? We will be remembered by it.
100%. 100%.
Hmm.
So yeah, so that's a good transition, I think, into our
Hmm.
next segment, talking about, speaking of memorable, excellent content. I think now is a great time to bring in our guest, Mr. A. Lee Judge, is joining us today. He is the founder of Content Monster. He's the host of the podcast, The Business of Marketing. He's hosted, uh, if people here are on in the marketing field, you definitely have heard these names: Rand Fishkin, Joe Polisi, Seth Godin. He's in the big. He's playing. Lee is playing in the big leagues, and we're very fortunate to have him here today with us. He's also the author of the book Cash. So, Lee, welcome to the show. We really appreciate you joining. I know most of today's listeners are likely familiar with your work, but for anyone who's just discovering you today, can you start
Yeah.
by giving us a bit more background into who you are and what you do?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me, Natalie and Anthony. I'm happy to be here. So my background kind of runs in two parallel lanes over my career. About 20 years in marketing and sales operations, mostly in global tech companies, and the same amount of years as a creative entrepreneur, creating content like video and podcasts and written content, mostly in the B2B space. And so when those two worlds collided around 2017, between the corporate marketing and the creativity, that was the birth of my agency, Content Monster, where we create content for these businesses.
Excellent. Well, we really appreciate you being here, and I know you've
Hmm.
done some amazing things in the content space. So we couldn't have a better guest to talk on these things.
Yes.
Well, I try. I hope I can contribute today.
and you're humble as well, so I love it. So yeah, so if you're okay with it, I'd like to kind of, we've prepared some questions
Yeah.
to get your insights and help our listeners today. So if you're good with that, I'd like to jump right in.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Perfect. So there's a lot of amazing content out there, also a lot of bad content, but I feel like a lot of it's being washed away in a sort of, I heard the term sea of sameness at a conference recently. So when you talk to your clients or you give a presentation, what recommendations do you typically offer to help individuals and brands rise above that noisy space out there?
Yeah, well, I tell them that they need two things, and that's quality and quantity. And I know often they're told that we don't need more content, but the real advice should be that we don't need more low quality content,
Mm-hmm.
because to rise above the noise, you need that quantity. And being scarce in content is no way to be visible, right? So you have to have both. And so I kind of give this formula. It's going to be a lot of my talks coming up this year, where you have context plus human viewpoints, and then AI to give you quality content at scale. So you get both. And so I'm always a proponent of quality and quantity, especially to fight against the noise.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that you get into a tricky place when you focus only on one side of those, because a lot of with the quantity part, a lot of it becomes low quality. But when you only focus on quality, sometimes you can focus too much and you end up creating one piece of content that takes you 3 months to create, and you wasted 3 months of impactful potential. So
there was a
I'm with you.
time
I
when
understand.
it was difficult to have both at one point, because if you wanted quality, it took time. And so now that we have AI, we can apply that quality, use AI and scale it while maintaining the quality. I've been at it for a long time. And I know at first, we had clients who say, hey, we're a smaller company and our competitor is bigger. We want to compete with them in terms of content. And I'll say, well, what are you doing now? Well, we have one quality video we do. We do this interview once a month and we put out a video, and they're real proud of themselves. And then we look at their competitor and they're putting out video every day or blog articles every day. And I was like, well, if you want to compete, you do need more. You can't say it's either or, quality or quantity. And for a while there, depending on your budget, your team, your creativity, then quality could stifle your quantity. But those days are past. You can have both now. AI brings us the ability to have both at the same time.
I agree. And it's amazing where AI has come just within the last year alone. I look back at some of the content that I would personally work through and leverage AI within the scope of creation, the creation process a year ago, and the quality and the work that I had to do on the back end after the fact then compared to now, it's just unbelievable. And if you really understand how to leverage AI right now, you're at an advantage over everybody. I do want to ask you, there are a lot of people still who are of the school of thought. They'll give you the pushback of, well, AI is taking away your creativity. AI is producing that sea of sameness again type of content. What do you say to people who kind of have that fear of AI or have that distrust of AI still?
Yeah, I don't think AI takes your creativity. I think too many people are giving it to AI. They're giving it away. They're not utilizing it themselves. They have it in themselves to do or to express, but instead they outsource it to AI. So AI is not taking it. We're giving it up. So it needs to be used for what it's best for. So you have your own creativity, your own thoughts, your own experiences, and then you just brain dump that and use AI for things like framing or organization of your thoughts, providing clarity. That's what AI is for. It's not for creating or having your thoughts for you. And to go a bit deeper on those three things, I mean, framing turns your raw notes into a clear angle or help you deliver the promise of what you're trying to convey. And then organization, again, turns that messy brain dump into a clear flow. And then clarity tightens those thoughts up so the information is conveyed more efficiently. And, I use AI even for some of my own blogs, but there's two places I use AI. One, I have an AI interview methodology where AI interviews me, but it's asking me for my experience. And I tell it to ask me one question at a time until I say stop. And so it interviews me, sometimes 15, 20, 30 minutes straight, but it's getting information from me. And so it won't be the same as anybody else because I'm not the same as anybody else. I have my own opinions, my own stances. And so that's the first step is, yes, I use AI, but not to create the content, to extract the content from me. That's what AI did. And then once I just casually, explain these answers and these questions, my flow of thought may be messy. It may be disorganized. It may not have an easy thread through what I was just brain dumping. But then AI can say, well, Lee, you said A, B, C, and D. Let me pull out Z and pull it back to the front. So it's a nice flow of information. It may even say, you mentioned this thing, but it's out of context. Should it go into this article or this story? And I'll say, oh no, I was on a tangent. It helps clean it up. So AI is just my interviewer, my writing coach, my editor, but it is not my creator.
That's a great way to look at it. The concepts, the ideas, the vision all come from inside, and then AI sort of serves as a partner to really organize it in the right ways and bring it to life with your direction, essentially.
Yep, absolutely.
So AI is a fun topic. We could chat on about that. I think our first I think it was our first episode. We talked a lot about AI. We could talk an entire. We might want to have you back for a whole episode at some point.
It's hard to avoid. It's really hard to avoid.
But
excuse me one second. That was actually really, really important what you just said, Lee. I think the point of, it's a tool in our hand, AI. And I think it's so important, what you just said. If we use it correctly, it can just really help us in so many ways.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, you can't ignore AI today. You have to be willing to adopt it and analyze where it's going to make you more efficient and effective. And for most people, that's a lot of different ways they can do that.
Yeah, I mean, to me at this point, it's electricity, it's the internet, it's how we do business. It's an amazing tool. I know I empathize with people who feel they're losing their jobs to AI, but at the same time, there are opportunities that are rising as well. So, I don't want to sound like a, do or die kind of situation, but, if you're going into the job market today and you hate AI, that's not going to help you get the job.
Right.
So it's like saying, well, I don't use computers, or, going in to work for, a candy company and saying, well, I really don't like sweets. It is what it is. I'm against sugar, but I'll work for Pillsbury. It just doesn't quite fit.
Yep. Yeah, you have to adopt it. It goes back to when computers became PC, personal computers anyway, became a thing. And I know I was younger then, but I saw people who worked with my parents and so on who quit their jobs because they retired early or whatever the case was, just because they didn't want to adopt that new technology. And I feel like that's kind of we're in a similar world right now, but this time it's going to turn into who knows what. It's amazing how fast it's developing. So
yeah, the speed is the difference, because our education system is built on 4-year blocks, 4 years of high school, 4 years of college, or 2 years of a trade school. 2 years is too long. 2 years from now with AI is going to be 20, 30 years of difference, what we're used to. So we don't have time to to go back to school for 4 years to change. We have to figure out what's going on now. And, you can opt out. Just know that you're going to feel like you're missing something at some point. And, it's not do or die. It's just participate or not.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I want to flip sides a little bit here, and I want to look at it more from sort of the consumer's point of view. So not necessarily AI, but going back to the content marketing topic. Consumers are really starting to get burned out by all the options out there. What are consumers now looking for from brands? What are they expecting from the content from brands? Is it on authenticity? Is it humor? Is it that quick hitter content that just gets to the point and gives them that one bit of information they need? Can you give us your take on how consumers are viewing content today to give brands and creators a little bit of a strategic edge?
Yeah, I think consumers want to be helped and not sold. They want information. They're going to take their own customer journey, as we call it. But that customer journey, they're going to be looking for information and education and information gain that your competitor may not be giving. And so, being helped versus sold, that's not new. But in terms of style, there is no one size fits all. Some may rather have humor or straightforwardness, but in the end, it's about how can you help me get closer to a decision I'm going to make. This is business. This isn't entertainment. This is, we're talking about brands here. But what's different is that the consumer chooses how they will receive the content. I think we're old enough to remember when there were fewer channels, literally, like TV had 3 or 4 channels. You had TV, you had maybe 1 or 2 radio stations in your town, and then internet comes along. Even then, there was only so many different ways to consume. But now the consumer chooses how they want to receive the content. And that means that our content has to be in the format that the consumer desires, not how we desire to distribute it. And we may say, well, we only want to write blogs, or we only want to do video. You can, but you're missing out on a segment of your consumers. And that means, even though some prefer to read, some consumers prefer to watch videos, some prefer to listen. As a business, you have to consider that you have several bases to cover, and their demographics won't tell you who consumes which format. You could have the executive CEO who binges on YouTube, and you think that he or she doesn't. You could have the same one who's scrolling TikTok, and you think they don't do that. So we can't control or predict where those particular people consume their content. And even though we can look at our analysts like Gartner and Forrester and see what they say, but I've known this from working back in radio with Nielsen and TV ratings. People don't always document what they actually do. Your CEO is not going to tell you he spends an hour on TikTok. So, and that's the case. So in terms of creating content, it's not so much about the style of the content. It's about the ability to repurpose and spread your content in all the places that your consumer is likely to come across it.
Yeah, you're right. You don't know. It's not as straightforward as reading some marketing research or reading a book and knowing exactly what your audience is going to do. You have a good idea, like you said, but there are outliers, and you don't want to miss out on their potential business, essentially.
Yep.
So on the content creator side, so let's say you're an individual getting away from kind of the full brand scope of things. You're an individual, you dream of being a content entrepreneur. You want to turn your content production into a living. You want to start earning through the creator program on X, and you want to sell digital products, and you want to sell your books and things like that. With all the content out there, is it still a realistic dream for someone who wants to be a content entrepreneur to turn that dream into a living that ultimately replaces their 9 to 5? Is that still a valid dream today with everything going on?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely possible, but if and only if they understand that an entrepreneur is a business endeavor, not a creative one. So just because you enjoy posting on Instagram for your fans doesn't mean you can make a business out of it. And there's going to be a point when the content is no longer about you or what you like. And that's when the game changes and starts to become work. So you have to be ready for that part.
Yeah, I think that's where people drop off from the content entrepreneur game. They don't want to do that work part. That's which is you have to.
Yeah.
You have
Because the
to
very
approach it
thing that
as a
you find
business.
interesting may not be anything at all near money. It may not be profitable. And, if you are a fanatic about underwater basket weaving and there's only 10 people in the world who are interested in that, that's not a business.
Yep.
Unless you're selling a $100,000 underwater basket weaving course.
So 1 to each, and then invest well, and you're set.
Yeah, but once you teach those 5 people, you're out of business. So still.
That's right. Well, you ruined my dreams of becoming an underwater basket weaving expert.
Sorry about that.
Nice. I love it. So on each episode, one of our main goals, or our main goal really, is to inspire leaders and budding creators and others to thrive and to learn new things and new ways that they can grow in the direction they want to grow in. So to wrap up the questions, we like to ask our guests to provide the top 5 tips from their perspective. What are 5 things that someone who wants to be like you and enjoy the success you've enjoyed in your career, what are 5 things that they can start doing now to get where you are today?
Okay, 5 tips. Wow. All right. So let's go. First one would be always have a plan for what's next if things work and if they don't work, because there'll always be some times when it doesn't work. They won't always work. So have a plan, not a plan B necessarily, but a plan after, like what's next. That's the first thing. Self-motivation, that's a must. If you're used to having someone tell you what to do next, entrepreneurship isn't for you. You need to be able to self-motivate and do things not only when you don't want to, but find out what the next thing you need to do is when you don't know what to do. Another would be to save money, because there's going to be droughts and you don't want to have to change direction of your business when things slow down. That's a frequent problem I think entrepreneurs have, is that they may have a good idea, maybe on a good path, but then when the money gets short, instead of pushing through it because maybe they can't because they're out of money, they try something new. And then the pattern starts over again. Something else new goes slow, they stop, they change directions. I think it's better if you can save even before you start, so that when things get slow, you can dig in instead of change direction. So that's the third one. Network with curiosity, meet people, connect with interesting people, keep in touch, be helpful to those people, be a connector, because nobody forgets connectors. When you introduce someone and if you make a connection between 2 people and they become friends or business partners or they do business together, they won't forget who connected them. And when you build that powerful network of people that you've connected, you're always in their favor. So that's the fourth one. And then the fifth one I would say is to keep time and value separate. The value you bring matters more than the time it took you to bring it. Don't get those two mixed up or tied together. Your value and your time are 2 different things. There's my 5.
And I like all those. I'll touch on that last one, the value and time. I think a lot of businesses make the mistake of charging maybe on an hourly rate. And really, if they charge for the value, they're missing out, because if they charge for the value, they could really increase their revenue to that point. But all 5 were great points.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And so that's coming to the end. Lee, really great stuff. We really appreciate you joining us. And like I said, it's an honor to have you here. Before we all jump off and go about our lives, though, I want to make sure you have a chance to tell the listeners where to find you. So do you want to take a moment to point people in the direction of where they can follow you, where they can find more about you and find more of the content you're putting out there?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So my agency is called Content Monster, MONSTA, contentmonster.com, where we create videos and podcasts for businesses. And then my main home base is my site, aleejudge.com, with or without the dot after the A, aleejudge.com, where we go further into how I help businesses. I consult with businesses on even things like AI optimization, and also bring in services from Content Monster there as well. So those are the main 2 places. Connect with me online. Everything is A. Judge, LinkedIn, X, wherever you want to find me. I'd love to connect with you and continue the conversation.
Awesome. Well, thank you very, very much. Excellent show today. Thank you, Natalie, as well.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks
Lee.
for having me. Thank you.
We appreciate everybody who listened in during the show, and we appreciate everyone who's hearing this now as a recording. wherever, whether you're listening to it here on X or on YouTube. We'll be publishing those recordings soon for those of you who are listening live. So keep an eye out on Natalie and my accounts for links to that. We'll also likely be publishing recaps on the different websites. So stay tuned for those. And then, of course, we will be back. We have our next show scheduled. So we'll be back next month with another episode focusing this time on the moment you decide to start, which is a really cool concept because, you know, everything starts somewhere, starting a business, launching into your dreams. Within this topic, we'll be focusing on kind of starting a business, what you need to know. And our guest will be Adrena Sawyer. She's the founder and principal consultant, actually, at Perk Consulting. And that will take place on June 18th at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So everything is Eastern time. So just, you know, if I forget to mention that, just assume we're on the East Coast. So just assume we're talking Eastern time. Until June 18th, though, have a wonderful month. Enjoy the kickoff of summer coming up. And you can follow us at Anthony Gaenzle and at Examine This Moment. Thank you so much for tuning in. And we look forward to continuing these wonderful conversations. Thanks, Natalie. Thanks, Lee. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone, for being here with us.